Gotta hang on to this mic. Hey. Okay, so I'm going to launch into Wendel's story, the Song of Wendel. Wendel Harper. "15. The oncoming sunrise and still visible moonset balanced each other on opposing edges of the horizon. The grassy slope on one side of the little airlock was just beginning to brighten. Two old friends crossed it towards each other. Walking part of the way, the wiry, medium-height man crossed his arms, smiling. He angled his chin toward the healthy, muscled blonde, throwing her arms open. "Gretz Manukian, what brings you to Southerpark?" She gave him a tight squeeze and a pat on the back, which he endured with a stoic grin. "Hey, same as you. Unloading government stock." They stood a few feet apart, facing the changing sky. The breeze smelled of evaporating moisture, and color rose softly. "How long you staying down here on Genesee?" "Hey, until I feel restless. I'm paid. You?" "Yep, I saw the credits hit the account, but I'll keep moving on. Treat you to breakfast roast? Heard they're grilling wild runner hens out behind the saloon." He turned to face her with a stretchy grin. "If that's so, you just made my day." They crossed the airlock together. Wendel Harper called out as they approached the grill master. "Jay, is you doing these birds? Is that gunpowder again for the seasoning?" "Yep, it's been all headshots lately, but sometimes you miss the taste of scattershot in the body." He set down his grill poker and caught Wendel in a hug. He and Gretz shared a nod. "I'll have one, and he'll have one. Gunpowder's got all the vitamins and minerals we need." Jay set to finishing two nearly done birds. Gretz leaned against the wall. "What's the news in Southerpark?" "Well, you know about the livestock failure. They think it's some rare pollen spread happening planet-wide. None of the aquarii wanted to hang around. Maybe they figured they'd be susceptible." Jay watched the food cook. "Decent business for those of us who can hunt the planet birds and buzzers. Wouldn't call it easy living, though." "Well, anyway," said Wendel, running a hand over her short hair, "these flocks have got a new fancy tech inoculant. The BioM team sounded pretty confident, so let's hope they know what they're doing." "Yep, glad you could bring them." Jay picked up two sticks and offered one in each hand to both of them. "Least I can do is make you breakfast. Gratis." He hissed a drawn-out S through his teeth. An old man and woman rounded the corner arm in arm, clearly following their noses. Jay smiled and turned the other birds on the grill. Wendel and Gretz raised their food in salute and turned to go. The two sat on the grassy slope, each biting the small elongated runner bird on its skewer. Between them, an open info sheet lay on the grass. His paperweight cloth received Wendel Harper's subscriptions daily, and bundled or crumpled nice and tight in any pocket she happened to stuff it into. She rustled it flat with a hand and set it to the daily issue that covered the inhabited planets in the local galaxy. Genesee is coping with major geothermal disruptions. Elections this year for the Genuine Council. She read headlines aloud when they struck her interest. Gretz Manukian stared into the sky and ate his breakfast. Scion Princess Soleil is back from her Alessandrian tour. The hunt for Ray of Sturluson continues. The sun had fully risen, shining directly into their eyes. She shook it by its corner, and the sheet went blank. I think that's enough news for now. From the cockpit, Wendel Harper read the real-time data feed on the planet-wide Genesee disaster signal. The hold of her ship was empty, hovering light and steady, ready to take on cargo. She held point and formation with 3 other pilots. No one ship was like another, but they flew together just the same. A voice crackled in through her headset. Are we still waiting on Groon? Those suits can talk all morning about who to send where and do what, and nothing gets done. Wendel smirked at her friend's grumping. You better be glad he's there instead of you. I can just see it now, you with the IDRA, the Bucket Brigade to put out the fire on City Hall. A dry chuckle came through the comm. That's exactly what it'd be like. Nah. Groon can do all the fancy talking he wants. He's good enough at it. It's just, I'm on my 3rd systems check since we've been waiting here for him, he ended plaintively. Anyway, glad you made it, Manukian. Didn't think I'd see you again so soon. Oh well, you know I'm a soft touch for a rescue mission. Here he is, chimed in the voice of Amira Roche from far left wing. The channel bleeped as his comm joined in. Maeve, said Wendel with a warm smile. Hello, darling. All you all? Ah, but it's been a long morning. Sounds like it. What's the word from the hallowed halls of bureaucracy? Well, the Imperials are putting another refugee ship in orbit for temporary residence, seeing as how both Anzi and Anan are now on the impending list. They still can't, or won't, supply any ships for ground rescue, so that's being left up to the Genesee Guard. Sighs from a few voices. We report to GG Unit 17. They're currently still ferrying survivors from Search of Province, but they'll be en route in 2 days. Instrument readings give us a week till Anzi's situation goes critical. So we just hang here while the air gets thicker. That's right. You all ready to do a sweep of the fault? Hour's ready, Grim. Glad you're back. His ship came into visual, and they reformed to give him lead. Just sent you all a flight plan. Let's go. In V formation, like underwater shell hunters, they slid through the cloud layer, coming into bird's eye view of the stone city of Anzi and the barren, craggy hills around it. Maneuvering low enough to see the ground with the naked eye, but well above the city traffic, they followed the line of hills curving to the southwest. The scar on the ground where the fault lay was highly evident. It was already shifting. Wendel saw the dark cloud to her right before Leif spoke. Something's happening to the north. They swung around to face it. Before they'd finished crossing the city, a series of cracking booms, like dynamite, shook the air. This isn't preliminary, Wendel muttered. This doesn't look preliminary, she said over the mic. Oh, no, it isn't, said Gretz. From north to west, a growing wall of ash-laden black smoke billowed upwards. Booming, grinding noises sounded at alarming decibels. In the distance, through the screen of ash, the sides of 3 hills began sinking, while lower elevations began to steam and seethe. Beneath chemical waves of ash, lava began to bubble, pool, and spread. The city sat squarely in the path of things now happening. Wendel mentally calculated the rate of disaster. An hour, maybe 3, before the city gets swallowed. Does anyone know what just happened? Instrument reports are on the air. The entire fault is under immediate and violent subduction, not expected to cease for weeks. Leiv's voice weighed heavily as he echoed the news. The magnitude of the 10th anticipated tectonic shift within hours will destroy the city of Anzi. All of it lost, intoned Emir Roche. Let's go. It doesn't matter who else is coming. We have to get there now. We each find a place to land and take on as many passengers as we can. Also, Leiv paused. This is voluntary. Bullshit, this is voluntary, said Roche. Not kidding around, Starweavers. We're going into the fire here. We have our reasons for what we do. So, Leiv cleared his chest with a cough. Follow me if you're ready. He's right, said the 5th wing. I have my reasons. Fair winds to you all. The last ship zoomed up towards atmospheric exit. This was followed by a stunned silence from the other 4 arcing southeast toward the city at top speed. The approach took 5 minutes. Minimal flight directions and responses were traded as each of the pilots steeled themselves to single-hand their cargo ships through the chaos. The 2 outer wings claimed the nearest city quadrants and broke off first. Wendel Harper took to the southern direction. In the sky surrounding them, a multitude of private ships were taking off on their own desperate flight paths. She looked for an open space to hover and take in some people. It can be so difficult, she thought with an edge of absurdity, to find a parking spot. She glimpsed a park ahead. Torrents of hot ash might be following her by minutes. More than 10, about more than 30. The growing stench of subterranean minerals smelled like engine fire. The park she approached had, Wendel noticed, very high walls. It was, in fact, not a park. It was a warehouse without a roof, with a green space inside. She pushed aside her questions as she noticed that there were plenty of people within who were clearly aware of catastrophe's onset. Mercifully, the airspace above it was clear, and she maneuvered into it. Setting the controls to keep the ship flying in place, she unrolled the cable ladder to hang just inside the main entrance. She scrambled over to the hatch and dropped onto the ladder, hanging on one hand, amplifying her voice with the other. My hold can take on 40 people. I count, she said, scanning quickly. 23. Climb aboard 1 at a time. Move, let's go. She hopped back in, sticking her hand out to wave people up. Wendel was relieved to see people helping each other on board. She was giving a hand to the 8th person up when she overheard the argument on the ground. What are you saying? This is our chance. You're coming with us. Toller tried to grab Shelley's hand, but she drew away just as quickly. No, I'm not. You go. Wendel stuck her head down as she reached for the next passenger. Wrap it up. I'm stopping again to fill the hold. You heard her. Toller took a few quick steps toward Chelly, but was stopped when an older, taller man grabbed his shirt. It's her place to make her decision. You don't have to understand. Toller was shoved toward the ladder, which he grabbed. Save your life. He began to climb, numb with disbelief. He couldn't take his eyes off Chelly, who was now smiling slightly. He was almost to the top when she reached in her pocket and threw something at his head. He blocked and caught it on reflex. It was a tossed fruit, pulpy and sweet in its leathery skin. Before he could think of something to say or do, Wendel Harper hauled him into his ship. Just gonna take a sip here. From within the escape pod, the two women watched the nearby dogfight between Harper's Drift 9 and their attacker. There wasn't much debris nearby, so Harper used the Entropy 8 to summon focus. Roche watched shots fire past the hull of her ship with clenching fists. "Where's that gun of yours?" "But dancing." The attacking fighter popped in from a blind angle, straight toward the window of the pod. There was a split second to grab hold before the blow sent them careening. "I think it fair, perhaps, to discount your trip fee," Roche breathed as the pod slowed itself. "It's my rotten luck." The passenger, a lovely woman, though currently disheveled, shot her a fey look. "Listen, if we get through this, I will pay double." She sighed and muttered. The window drifted round in time to see the fighter release a beam that stretched into a razor-thin plane. Drift 9 dove out of the way, but Roche's ship was helpless in its path. "No, stop! Why?" She watched the beam fatally interrupt both of her engines. "Entropy!" Roche wailed as her machinery crumbled. A wide white flash suddenly cut across their field of vision. The fighter wobbled past, now missing part of the scorpion wing. Another gigantic beam flashed out of the Drift 9, making a square hit before anyone could blink. The fighter just drifted now, leaking fuel into space, the rear of it shredded. The two looked at each other, holding their breaths. Drift 9 popped up in front of them, hatch open to swallow them. After steadying the pod inside, Ray Groom opened the door. The passenger exited, staggering over to sit on a nearby cargo case. As Roche stepped out, she clapped Groom on the shoulder. "Skyfather?" Blave nodded and grinned. He was a crack shot with that beast of a thing. She knew from the time they went asteroid shooting. Amira felt the ship beneath her on its way into the next neighborhood. The green-haired passenger looked up from where she sat. "Where are we headed right now?" "Out of here, first," Amira Roche replied. "After that," she looked at Grim, "we'll talk it over." "I'd like to discuss it before we go very much further." She stood and approached them. "My errand is urgent." Blave and Amira gave each other a look. "We'll take it to the captain," he said, gesturing for them to follow. Toller vacated the co-pilot's chair when the three of them entered. Lev touched Wendel on the shoulder before he took the seat. She unbuckled and embraced Amira. "I'm sorry about your ship." Amira began the laughter, but they both carried it for a moment. "I've caught up with you. Now we'll both have 9s. Great number. Badge of pride." Wendel wiped her eye. Amira indicated her passenger. "This is Octahydria. She's looking to contract a private transport." "Nice to meet you, Miss Hydria. You've found the best ship round these parts." The two of them enjoyed the joke. "Well, where is it you're headed?" She drew herself up, smoothing her hair. "To Alessandra capital, with haste." "64. We have to wait. They're running emergency traffic signals, limiting in and outbound. There's a newscast about it." Wendel Harper reached up to tune in the overhead speakers. The boy sitting co-pilot and the passenger hushed up to listen. The Pyrian midsummer vision was interrupted today by Ray of Sturluson, who descended from the skies on the capital during the final moments of the intergalactic solstice celebration. The capsule he descended in was emitting an agent bearing AJ-235, the disease that decimated the planet Herelium 25 years ago. Many attendees are already experiencing symptoms. The verdant plateau at Alessandra capital is under quarantine, and vision attendants are being held there and at Melbea Hospital. As this narrated, they silently turned to meet each other's eyes. Hydria rose from the fold-down seat to stand behind the pilot's chairs. "We're waiting to be let into the main transport arena, correct?" Harper nodded. "That's right. They've paged us with a wait time of a couple hours. There's no telling how long we'll be in line." She pointed to a timer on the air traffic display. The passenger pulled a piece of paper from her pocket. "Here, establish a link with this frequency." Harper checked it and nodded. After a short moment, someone answered. "Spear Traffic Control, how can I assist you?" At mention of the capital's towering military building, the captain faced her passenger in mute surprise. "This is Dr. Octahydria of the Lorimer Institute, requesting entry to the Helium airlock." "Acknowledged. Dr. Hydria, do you have a clearance code?" 2106P Knight C3W. "Thank you, Doctor. Drift 9, new traffic directions have been sent. You may proceed." "66. The airlock manager stood with Octahydria and Wendel Harper by the Drift 9, surrounded by military and council vehicles. The wind was high, and they raised their voices to speak over it. "Miss Harper, I'm required to use private transport during my consult with the Spear. I'll be traveling between here and the Libran Federate. Are you available exclusively for the short term?" Wendel tilted her head and nodded. She'd been half expecting the offer. Setting herself on an appointed route might be a good way to let trouble blow over. She jerked her elbow toward the ship. "What about the boy?" The airlock manager considered. "We may be able to offer him clearance." I'll be here for the night, said Adria. I'll get in touch with you soon, if you want to talk it over with him. The captain shook hands with Adria, waving as she re-entered the ship. She set herself back down in her chair. From where he remained in his seat, Toller looked past the long shadows toward the Royal Court. Dr. Adria is hiring me up for a shuttle ride. You can probably stay with me so long as you'll be handy. Toller lifted a hand at the beam. We're at the Capitol now. Wendel smiled, remembering he'd never seen this before. Yeah, old Alessandra. Her gaze traveled up the dark octagonal obelisk to the sky. Toller tapped his teeth together in consideration. Tell you what, said Wendel, powering her ship. We'll decide over dinner. Due to energy pattern expansion rates, we need to widen flight paths beyond the sea sphere. Here. With her laser pen, she colored the zone orange. Except for you people, Arcta indicated the technical instrument pilots, because you're carrying the Dyson probes and photon sounders. You're in 2 teams, each covering a hemisphere. There is a set rotation plan in case communication equipment is affected. We already have some signal bandwidth workarounds. The door opened, and General Aparia stepped in. Dr. Hendrea straightened. Now, for those of you shadow marking, priority observations are signal strength, signal length, placement, and finally type. Don't you think the subject of what we see might be more important than the quantified signatures? Arcta looked down and let half a smile emerge. Those of you who've examined the list of signal types have found, I'm sure, that the list keeps growing longer and is already too long to memorize. Type recognition is last priority because attempting it would keep attention from every other reading. The data is being poured over at Lord. If we find a useful pattern in it, then we might shift our focus there. Until then, let's concern ourselves with the possible effects and direction of the energy output, and how to handle and defend ourselves from it. Aparia leaned against the wall, arms crossed. And we'll detach 1 team, that's you, to array themselves between here and Futurus. You'll have a more sensitive set of instruments. We want you to sit there and read. I'm sorry we can't just deploy satellites for this. We want people there live reading and able to respond. That's all you need to hear from me. Your officers will give you the nitty-gritty. She watched the pilots exit, saluting the general as they passed. The guide cleared her data display. The general took a step forward. We're going to assign 2 shadow markers to type cataloging. That would leave holes in our coverage. We've already thinned out in order to create a buffer zone. I think the greater hole in our knowledge would be to ignore this information. We can spare that much, so that's what we'll do. Do you realize that the energy dynamic in that sphere is over 20 times that of any known non? And we still have no reason or insight other than confusion. Diverting resources from safety on something practically pointless is reckless. I hope you understand. That's what we'll do until or unless we can bring out another alpha base. At this point, Adria nodded, turning around to put things in her bag. I'm heading to Alpha 1 and back in 3 days. On her way out, she stopped to salute. General. She crossed the corridors of the Alpha base to where the Drift 9 was docked. Arcta entered straight to the cockpit, where Wendel Harper lounged in the captain's chair. She chucked her stuff into a bin and flopped down next to her, heaving a sigh. Fools. They really have no idea. Wendel straightened and began powering the ship. That kind of day today. $169. I'm lining up our next paid gigs, said the short-haired blonde woman in the co-pilot's chair. She was scanning messages displayed on the info sheet statically attached to the wall next to her. Cool, said Kohler, as he concentrated on being a successful student driver. Pilot. Driver-pilot. Wendel called it driving as often as she called it flying. Something about it being in the profession. She laid it down bluntly. Having you along means a different kind of picking and choosing, but it narrows things toward my preference anyway. I still consider you an asset on board. I believe that I can be, the boy said with equal bluntness. If I'm not, you just boot me right away. I would, and I hope you wouldn't take it personally, she smiled fondly. But you've already turned things around for me once. After that, it's just about anything you need from me. I'll stick up for you. Your limits are my limits, which are, honestly, good for me. She propped up her feet on the corner of the controls and continued musing aloud. No official contracts that don't include personal appointment or come from close enough to allow clauses. We'll only accept under-the-table work for a while. I'm fine with those clients and that shift in the balance now after my stint as a big scene chauffeur. Wendel covered her face with both hands, something she would do in reference to that time. For a quiet moment of driving, they both stared straight ahead. So what happened while she was shuttling Arcta Adria to and from the sphere was a horrifying catastrophe which she managed to survive. The captain turned and flattened a wrinkle in the kerchief, the info sheet against the wall. She tapped through and wrote some replies. The lad held his silence while she expounded. Everything can take as long as it needs to, partly because I want to keep teaching you, but also because I don't want some of the patchwork on here fraying untimely. Her eyes pointed around the ship. No hurry jobs. As he kept even progress, Toller noticed her assessing sidelong. So, there's under the table, which you know about, and there's hidden, which you shouldn't. Hidden jobs often aren't planned for. They're a bonus. I may not let you know they're happening, though you may suspect. I may not even actually know myself. One of the cautionaries of being an independent contractor. Hidden should stay hidden, more or less, if you know what I mean. We're not in the business of judging. I know I'm not. Wendel snapped a finger in front of her face to break her focus from the info sheet, and she relaxed back Each of the co-pilots cheered. We've got one probable, which is enough forward thinking for now. She nodded to the boy. We're already on course. You're doing very well. Oh, hey, wait. Toller kept his cool and kept his course, letting her explain. There's an assistance flag for this occupied side space. We're about to pass it, but don't alter too quickly. Just start removing top speed factors, and we'll see if we can get a good look. As they passed, Wendel captured a direct view. Weird, it looks like a life raft. We can come back around. I'll let you do this. Take a side lane, keep slowing down, and listen as I talk you through. The student pilot did so. Add 3 planes and take an outer tangent. Then a reverse acceleration parabolic, RRAP, which spells wrap, which is not done in reverse, I remember. And then we have to overshoot to use the correct traffic entry for the side space. Remember, in space there are no roads, only rules. Then minus a plane, take a minor tangent, then wrap, and we'll descend in. We call that a clover leaf. Toller nodded as he assembled these directions in his mental picture. I can technically do each of those things. Now, do them one after the other. I believe in you, said the captain, shooting her protege an adventurously reassuring smile. She supplied reasoning for the detour. I've got most of the tools, and I've practically stitched 2 halves of a ship together, so I stop for people in the drifts when I can. Drift 9? He asked, referring to the ship's name. Drift 9. Do you remember how I showed you how to turn this on? Toller looked over to where she was moving the spherical toggles of the photon particle co-disruptor, the PPCD, the CD bands. Uh-huh, he murmured, eyeing her actions. Wendel used a fold-out keyboard to send a symbol flag, which she dictated for his benefit. Offer of assistance. Did you really total your ship 9 times, like you said to your friend? Not exactly, but in manners of speaking. She viewed another capture as they passed close visibility again in the opposite direction. That is a weird thing to see in vacuum space. Someone's just standing on it, looking comfy. Seems like we could use some help, though. A reply returned to them. Assistance offer accepted. Wanted. Fuels, charges. Toller started executing his second wrap. On the co-pilot monitor, Wendel scrutinized what she could see of the strange little ship. I'm not sure what types of fuels that uses, but I've got some kinds. My charge modulator is a good one anyhow. Stop in that zone ahead. She pointed toward the indicator on his display. I'll take over for the descent. I'm not going to quiz you, but I want you to pay attention. I'll tell you things as I do them. In the captain's chair, she settled into her straps and rapidly readjusted her settings. She also received standard ship spec dimension readings and fed them to her specs. Would you use that keyboard control to select spaces A5, B7, and B1 on that grid? He deftly manipulated the PPCD. Stating the message, she recited, hold space adequate. Encapsulate, confirm. Drift 9 lowered gently into the wide field by the other vessel. The simple reply bounced back. Confirmed. Encapsulate, Wendel read aloud. Soleil watched the ship's large door approach and open, like the maw of a fish to a floating tip net. The crowd craft was in good repair, with emphasis on repair. She could have been more nervous about the encounter, but she wasn't here. The boon felt effective as she used it, as surely as her hand could move. She engaged it with certain details, appearing as self, well kept, wearing zero clearance, no questions, flash display credentials, the signs of official covert business, with personal cam. Or because she could tell it was working. As Moonshadow was about to be swallowed, she looked around to no sign of Garlic. Garlic? She called aloud. No Garlic. With that, they were inside the vessel. The door closed, and they settled into gravity. With what we have on board, we can manage a link through at one of the remaining polygons, and that's where we're going. This is one of the last few, and our only option without having to dawdle about with sensitive cargo. Let's look ahead to these coordinates. Sturluson fed them in, and his pilot Trosper interfaced them to the ship's advanced viewers. An unexpected sight met them on the display. Sturluson cursed quietly and left the chamber. He returned, leading the princess to the cockpit ahead of him. Can you identify that ship? He asked, pointing. A very beefy vessel was floating next to a bizarre space object. After Trosper obliged her better views of the few identifying areas, Princess Soleil replied, "It's an official Vanguard vehicle." "Yes, it is," Brave Sturluson replied. "Anything more specific?" She shook her head, no. His expression turned dark, yet he chuckled a bit through his glower. "Really, this is exactly what they should be doing." "Are you expecting this, Rave?" "No, Vern. Despite my eminent capabilities, I am not up to the minute on every corner of the universe. But in this case, we've caught up to the cutting edge of news. In fact, we're making the next headline. I'm used to this, aren't you?" The last he directed to the princess, still studying the data. Soleil turned to face him directly. "Yes, but not as often in such a manner." She again felt that the benefit of her position within the opposition would amount to little if interrupted at this point. Though she admitted the valiance of the Vanguard, she did not wish them this situational victory. "Well, it's like this much of the time in my world. Then again, we give them every reason. They've got every reason right now." "Secure everyone in the back," said Sturluson, dismissing Princess Soleil. "Vern, choose your path of approach." Derringer had been hustling along a clear, to him, trail, observing their speed as being inconspicuously reasonable. That was something he could keep up with, even catch up with a little. He stayed on target with light-intensity mini-readings until he noticed a sudden tack that looked responsive. Gauging from experience, his prey was near an objective, and from the angle of the tack from the initial path, he guessed how near and in what direction. He took an opposite tack to complete a pincer movement. Chasing people down was a lot like cooperating with them. Thinking of it that way, he was actually quite the team player. The view resolved, and Derringer moved up to a standoff. A government vehicle nicer than his was flashing a stop and search at a ship nicer than the government vehicle. There was no road here, nothing except for the giant dream catcher, twice the size of its government neighbor. This was a strange tableau. Anyone who could add would know that it didn't add up. He was right on time to catch these two buckaroos twitching at each other, whoever they were. Things seemed on the verge of confrontational. And what but he should be right here, as though he were supposed to be. The private investigator, did a secret government employer make him a detective? Ran another math problem. The fact that he's been gambling on trouble, plus observing a fake wreck, plus tracking someone to a random point, plus this fast and expensive sports ship, plus a highly equipped official, plus having powerful silent protection, plus having some of the best gear he's ever been allowed to carry, plus that weird strategy-sized thingy. He absolutely, simply had to get involved, even if he didn't have all the details. If the princess were on the government vehicle, his contract would already be over. So he knew which side to take in case there was a princess in the other one. A half-moment gear up, and he dove in to grab the attention of the... Was that a Vanguard? Is he one of ours? Yours? Vern Trosper asked his friend of many years about the new arrival. You know, I'm not sure. I'm not in charge of everything, replied Sturluson, expressing an edge of exasperated humility. Trosper nodded coolly. Then let's brunch first. With rapid stage multi-hold aim, Trosper's foil beam salvo ended successfully as soon as it started. Invitation sent. Accepted. Vanguard totaled. Peppy observer hobbled. Let's pick them up, said Ray of Sturluson, examining their new friend. Hey, that ship's government too, isn't it? It is, isn't it? They weren't acting like buddies. I don't think they are. After a clearly understandable adoption procedure, Derringer stood inside of Trosper's ship, facing Sturluson, who commented, "You're an interesting person to have that kind of ship." "I'm a really interesting guy." Soleil heard this as she appeared in the hatchway to the compartment where the greeting was happening, compelled to assess this transition herself. Derringer's eyes caught her presence immediately. He was looking for a really interesting gal. .206. Drift X occupied a serene spot in orbit near the planet it just left. This was called Omd, a sound similar to that for the gestational rock, the Omba, how the people of this planet, the Orni, begin their lives. Every human aboard Drift X felt themselves profoundly changed after their encounters here. The ship was drenched in a serious, solid quiet, as each person reshaped their world to include what they'd just seen. The knowledge of this place was rare, which made it also heavy. Princess Ascendant Soleil, Magus, occupied the circular gunnery, with only the returned Keashi liaison, Dragon Food. Their discussion was as subdued as Dragon Food could ever really be. After much adventure, these are the friends we requested that you meet, and you asked on your home planet what service you might be able to do for us after we relieved your stranded state. If you perceive any imbalance of effort, feel assured that will be corrected. We Keashi live or perish by the transactions of our innate currency. Right now, I'm not deeply concerned with balancing the books. For how long have your peoples known each other? Though Orani have only inhabited their home planet, Keashi are in a great many places. Our familiarity springs as though from the dawn of time. They had little trouble recognizing those of us who had some connection in their affairs. We make our way around as certain things create for us a calling. In fact, we are, at this time, yourself and company included, receiving a calling, being summoned, if you will. To where? A place you know of, where you have never been, but is a part of your home. With people you know, but not very well, who you will have a chance to know better. This is my most succinct and accurate summation. Soleil resisted the immediate pull towards an available action. She hadn't had time to her own thoughts regarding the new situation in the royal family. Though her feelings had become complicated, and she suspected the greater truth was even more so, she loved Celeste. She would have to deal with that loss on her own time. She sensed that some hours for reflection rested just around the corner. The functioning shift in rulership would mean instant changes for everyone, with herself a factor of increased importance. Soleil felt alerted to the impending possibility of when she should call a halt or take an exit in order to do what was necessary when a point of departure should arrive. In some version of events, they could be keeping her entertained and occupied at playing diplomatic head of state, while everything fell apart and her seat was dismantled. In this case, the directed action still seemed appropriate. Perhaps just this one more. Moonshadow had invented some formulae from the translocation that was achieved when directed by Soleil in contact with the Viridian phasing lattice. Using these formulae, it recalibrated the necessary energy activations to perform the translocation independently of the Viridian phasing. Human initiation and kinetic response were still required. Moonshadow communicated extensively with Drift X before it left with Exter, and together they demonstrated the capability when parties left the Omnibus. As she stretched and limbered up, Soleil thought about serving in new capacities. She was already Princess Ascendant after succeeding her mother. Her father, Grand Barrio, would now be King Proxim. King Barrio, in common parlance. Soleil was still 5 years from the ruling age of 30, and the Proxim should reign until then. In the royal hierarchy, she would return to what had been her mother's role. Hands-on organizer, addresser of concerns, synchronizer of intentions. Without her, all of that would be handled by greater staff.
And last call for the bathroom before I close it up. Do you need it?
Yes.
Okay.
Suspenseful, I know. As she stretched and lifted up, Soleil thought about serving in new capacities. She was already Princess Ascendant after succeeding her mother. Her father, Grand Vario, would now be King Proxim. King Vario, in common parlance. Soleil was still 5 years from the ruling age of 30, and the Proxim should reign until then. In the royal hierarchy, she would return to what had been her mother's role. Hands-on organizer, addresser of concerns, synchronizer of intentions. Without her, all of that would be handled by greater staff. There would be some additional burden on her father as he upheld the duty to determine vision, direction, and priority. From her current unique standpoint, Soleil was able to work on mitigating the situation that the people of the Imperium would receive. She could create rare options for mediation by gaining a decent grasp of the faction. This, so long as they were offering her access, whatever they intended for it to mean. People had been making ready while she did. She maintained the focus of her awareness on the interface. Lines of light described the action zone that DriftX would read. A half sphere at the end of a conical data-gathering projection area, similar to a stage spotlight that ended where she stood on the multi-use turret platform. Time for some shadow boxing. Time to dance. Dispelling her thought chatter, Soleil began working to the requested guidance actions to send the vessel to their destination. Captain Wendel Harper could be heard hooting over the comm as her ship spun off in ways undreamed of. When asked what it was like working with higher-level awareness at DriftX, she smiled and said its personality hadn't changed. It was just better at expressing itself now. The wavering dislocation of the jump settled into the feeling of normal presence. People filtered up to the fore to get a view. Images of this planet haunted Soleil's childhood. She was here for a very good reason, certainly. So many scenes she could recall. Mourning, the monument, ongoing refugee struggles. It was the birth planet of a major economic contributor, and of a notorious social enemy. An enemy who'd spent no energy on showing her personal malice, though she'd been well placed to receive it. Sturluson was purposeful. Next to DriftX in space was a familiar fighter ship, and she figured who was in it. Returning her gaze to the planet Herelian, the princess felt a rock in her gut. Ship-to-ship communication was reestablished, and Ray of Sturluson's voice asked a question. Can the princess tell everyone where we are? Turning to look at her, Wendel pushed a button on her console that lit up. Taking a step into it, Soleil answered. We are looking at Herelian, an abandoned planet of the Pan-Galactic Imperium. She is correct, and we are going to land. Harper, follow Trosper. It gets really exciting after this, and there's a lot more to Wendel Harper's illustrious career. But I can skip to the end and give us an easy conclusion for Wendel Harper's plot arc. Truck driver to the stars. She picked up some hitchhikers, obviously. I myself have never hitchhiked on a big rig, but I've heard people say that people can be really decent. 291. The wide, elevated meadow full of people was in a somewhat festive mood. They'd just done something harrowing and hard, but they had done it. They believed in themselves that much at least. Captain Wendel Harper's runners from the field had been tying up the passenger organization so people could get aboard and they could go. The fuels money was there. She believed them. This was actually a nice place for a breather. There was a mist of flowers over the ground. Flowers. It was just her again on the road, plus this next bunch. Wendel had been called in to redistribute people located in an inaccessible meadow. The Dawning Threeports had already sent some of them home. If this worked out, Wendel might be hiring more shuttle power to help, and this could go faster. Sending everybody somewhere specific wasn't as easy as doing it the way they'd done it before. Conundrums like this are situationally unique, as tend to be their solutions. Only so much could safely be done at a time, given the energy resources. They'd poured it out, a fleet of soldiers all at once, but that had been improvised on the spot, with the emergency inspiration of a unique set of embodied forces. The Dawning formulae had to respect some laws of nature, so things progressed steadily apace. People were doing well enough hanging in there, prepared and lighter-hearted, even celebratory. There were no Vidani in this meadow, just humans. They did all know Vidani, and confirmed that the ride was called for them. There were still a lot of people left here, but not too many. That's what the encoded request for service had said when it came to her through DriftX. The message popped up through an obscure node of the system that she barely remembered was active.